October 3rd, 1878, southern Kansas frontier. No moon, no wind, no mercy. The prairie is so still it feels staged, as if the land itself is holding its breath. You can hear the soft bend of dry grass under boots, the faint creak of leather harnesses, the distant cough of a tired horse trying not to make a sound. 500 men are kneeling in the dark. They aren't soldiers, they aren't lawmen, they're scouts, frontier trackers, hunters, men who learn to read dirt the way preachers read Bibles. Men forged in dust and silence, not parade grounds, and they are staring into 17 miles of open nothing, where 2,000 outlaws are sleeping. Bandits, renegades, desert wolves, men who have burned towns from New Mexico to Missouri, men who have ridden into farms and ridden out with children's toys dangling from their saddlebags, men who have outgunned sheriffs, outrun posses, and laughed while doing it. For months, these outlaws had grown bold, too bold. They had turned the frontier into a hunting ground. Wagon trains torn open like rib cages, supply stations reduced to ash, telegraph lines cut so often the government stopped bothering to repair them. And now, they were confident enough to camp openly. No lookout fires, no perimeter riders, just a massive outlaw encampment spread across the lowland near the Arkansas River. Horses tied, whiskey poured, rifles stacked, laughter floating through the grass like smoke. They thought the frontier was theirs, but 20 miles away, in a ditch so shallow you could miss it if you blinked, 500 scouts had been lying in darkness for 2 hours. No talking, no movement, not even spitting, just waiting for a signal that might not come. The youngest among them, a boy named Jacob Cole, hadn't even turned 19 yet. His hands trembled so badly he had to grip his rifle barrel just to keep it from rattling. He wasn't scared of dying, he was scared of making noise. Beside him lay a man twice his age, face lined like dried riverbeds, named Silas Boone. Former cavalry, former lawman, former almost everything. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look brave. He just looked already gone. 7 hours, Boone had whispered earlier. That's how long it'll take. 7 hours for what? Jacob had asked. Boone didn't answer, because the answer weighed too heavy to say out loud. 7 hours to break them. 7 hours to bleed them. 7 hours to turn a lawless army into a graveyard. This wasn't a charge. This wasn't some heroic stand with flags waving overhead. This was a slaughter that had to be precise, silent, organized. Because if the outlaws realized what was unfolding too early, 500 men would die before sunrise, and the prairie would swallow the story whole. But this night didn't just happen. It was built, piece by piece, body by body, mistake by mistake. 3 years earlier, this region didn't even have a name on most maps. It was just empty land between rail stops and broken treaties. But something else grew here too. A corridor, a natural route that outlaws realized could connect Kansas rail lines with hidden western safe havens. A perfect passageway to move stolen gold, weapons, and free men from justice. They called it the Dust Run. The government called it nothing. Because the government wasn't here. Not really. They had forts scattered like forgotten teeth. A few deputies in towns that barely existed. Supply lines stretched so thin they snapped every winter. Law didn't reach this far, but violence did. Every month, more gangs moved in. Some ex-Confederates with nothing left but bitterness. Some deserters from the Mexican border campaigns. Some just hungry boys who grew into killers. They formed loose alliances, trade networks, protection circles. What had once been a territory problem became an outlaw ecosystem, and the towns suffered. Rail shipments disappeared. Entire farming families vanished. Churches boarded up after 2 preachers were found nailed to their own doors. No one knew where the gangs slept. No one knew where they ran, until the scouts started following the dirt. The scouts weren't official. They didn't wear uniforms. They weren't on any payroll anyone could trace. They were assembled quietly by a man named Elias Harrow, a former government tracker turned private intelligence contractor for railroad magnates desperate to protect their investments. But Harrow didn't speak like a businessman. He spoke like a preacher for grief. These men aren't criminals, he told them during the first meeting. They're a migrating disaster. A storm that learned how to ride horses. He handpicked every scout, not for bravery, not for loyalty, for pattern recognition. Men who could look at a smudge of dirt and tell you the weight of the man who left it. Men who could smell burned grass and tell when it happened. Men who had lost something and didn't talk about it. Jacob joined because his brother had vanished on a supply run. Boone joined because he no longer knew how to live anywhere that wasn't dangerous. By the time Harrow finished gathering them, he had 500 men who weren't soldiers. They were something rougher, ghosts being aimed like bullets. For 6 months, They didn't fight, they watched, from ridge lines, from dry creek beds, from abandoned wagons. They recorded patterns, temporal rhythms, how long the gangs stayed in one area, where they rotated their camps, which horses they favored, which nights they drank instead of posting guards. They mapped the dust run without ever touching it, and slowly, something horrifying became clear. The gangs weren't just roaming, they were gathering, forming a massive trade convergence along the river, a meeting point where gold, guns and human captives were being exchanged. 2,000 men, 2,000 armed, violent, ungovernable men in one place. It was either a disaster or an opportunity. Harrow didn't leave room for debate. "We don't arrest them," he said quietly. "We don't warn them. We erase the route," some men protested. Not because they felt sorry, but because 500 against 2,000 wasn't strategy. It was math suicide. "You want us to die for railroads?" one asked. Harrow didn't even blink. "I want you to make sure no mother around here ever watches another son dragged into the prairie and not come back." Silence. And then nods, which brings us back to that night. October 3rd, cold ground, cold stars, colder future. 500 scouts, lined in arcs across low ridges and gullies, encircling an outlaw camp so massive it looked like a small city of darkness. You could hear them laughing now, songs drifting, bottles clinking, boots stamping. They were celebrating. They had just pulled off the largest armored train robbery west of the Mississippi. 4 safes, 3 guards executed, 2 million in stolen assets. They thought they'd earned this night. They thought nothing could touch them. Behind the nearest ridge, Harrow watched through a field glass. His voice barely lifted above a breath. "Positions holding?" Quiet clicks echoed down the line. "Yes, yes, yes." Jacob swallowed. Boone didn't. Harrow paused, then lowered the glass and whispered the only words that mattered. "Begin stage 1." And somewhere, a single flare streaked silently into the night sky. Not to warn, not to signal retreat, but to mark the first second of the longest 7 hours these outlaws would ever live through. The flare doesn't explode. It doesn't hiss. It doesn't crack like a warning. It just climbs. A thin vein of fire sliding upward through black sky, barely brighter than the surrounding stars. To the outlaws, it looks like nothing. A drifting ember maybe, a trick of tired eyes. To the scouts, it's a clock starting, not for minutes, for hours. At the eastern ridge, Captain Harrow lowers his hand. No more signals, no more adjustments. Everything beyond this point happens on instinct and preparation alone. Jacob feels his mouth go dry. Silas Boone exhales once. And then, the prairie begins to move. Not with noise, not with charge, but with pressure, like a storm sliding in low across the plains. Stage 1 isn't gunfire, it's disappearance. Because before 500 men can strike 2,000, you take away what makes them 2,000. Their horses, their escape, their lungs, their confidence. On the southern perimeter, 30 scouts crawl forward through grass so high it swallows them. Their rifles stay strapped on their backs. Their hands carry only small leather satchels. Inside, glass. Inside, powder, crushed capsicum, lye ash, wild tobacco dust. A frontier concoction designed to destroy eyes, burn lungs, and disorient men half drunk on stolen whiskey. They don't rush. They don't speak. They reach the first line of horses. 200 animals tethered in lazy rows, steam drifting from their nostrils in the cool night. One snorts. The scout nearest freezes like a corpse pretending. The snort fades. Then they work. Each man sprinkles the powder under muzzles, into feeding troughs, onto damp ground where breath loads the air. Not enough to kill, just enough to blind. By morning, these horses won't carry men. They'll throw them, bite them, trample them. 2 ridges west, stage 1B begins. Another 70 scouts slide through a dried creek bed. They carry no rifles, only wire, not soft wire, not weak wire, telegraph cable, raw, stripped iron cord. They stretch it across natural exit routes, across narrow gullies, between 2 lines of thick mesquite, knee-high, neck-high, invisible in darkness. A horse at full gallop won't see it. A man riding out will. And when they hit it, the wire won't slow them. It will erase them. Jacob doesn't know any of this. He only knows his position, his breathing, his trigger finger. He and Boone are posted on a slight rise overlooking the northern sector of the camp. From here, he can see at least 200 outlaw silhouettes slumped around flickering fires. Some laughing, some arguing, some already collapsed face down in the dirt. It smells like wet leather and stolen liquor drifting on warm air. Jacob wants to look away. Boone doesn't even blink. "Don't focus on faces," Boone murmurs. "Count shadows. Why? Jacob whispers. Because shadows don't lie to you. Jacob swallows and starts counting. Stage 2 begins 40 minutes later. It starts so quietly no one notices. A riderless horse stumbles through the camp perimeter, foam on its muzzle, eyes wild. It knocks into a cooking tripod, sending a pan clattering. Idiot, tied him too loose, someone mutters. Laughter. Another horse rears, then another. Then 3 break free in a violent knot of hooves and teeth. Outlaws curse, rush to grab reins, try calming them down, but when they breathe, the powder hits them, a burning rush into lungs, liquid fire in their sinuses, eyes tearing violently. Men stagger, not drunk, blinded, choking. Panic begins as confusion, not as fear, at least not yet. Then another thing happens. A sound, a gunshot? No. A crack of wood snapping? Still no. It's the sound of air moving fast, like a whip cutting darkness. A man laughs. Someone throwing knives out there? Then a body drops forward and doesn't laugh anymore. First arrow, not fired from a bow, from a modified compressed launcher, silent at 30 yards, a steel-tipped shaft punching through a man's neck before he feels it enter his skin. He doesn't cry out, he gurgles and collapses. Someone stands up, confused. Another arrow cuts the night, then another, then another. No muzzle flash, no smoke, no thunder, just silent corrections in flesh. Harrow didn't want gunfire too. Early. Gunfire makes chaos, but chaos without direction. He wanted confusion first. He wanted them weak before they were hit. Jacob's heart slams like a fist in a door when Boone taps his shoulder. Stage 3's about to start, Boone says flatly. Jacob doesn't ask how he knows. Boone always knows. At the western side of camp, a water barrel collapses, not because of impact, because the scouts emptied it 40 minutes ago and weakened the stave. The fire next to it surges out of control. A tent ignites, then another. Dry canvas doesn't burn. It devours. Flames jump like predators, and the wind finally shows up. Just a little, just enough. Fire! Someone screams, but no one knows where. Other voices shout, commands, insults, panic layered over blindness. Men grab rifles, fire blindly into darkness. Shots crack, gunpowder finally tears into the air. And that's when stage 3 opens. Jacob feels it before he hears it, like the tension in the air breaking. Boone lifts his rifle, doesn't aim at people. He aims at shapes, at movement, at direction, at the logic of panic. He fires once. A muzzle flash kisses the darkness. A figure drops. Jacob fires too, and the night explodes. 500 rifles, not all at once, in waves, like thunder rolling across the prairie, not aimed randomly, not sprayed, each section firing in sequence. Left flank, pause, center ridge, pause, right arc, pause, a rotating wall of death. Outlaws think they're being attacked by thousands, not hundreds, because they can't see where it ends. Screams replace laughter. Glass bottles shatter under trampling feet. Horses crash into wire. Some go down screaming with riders tangled in reins. Others buck riders into flames. Men run straight into steel cable. Their bodies fold. Their momentum cuts their own throats. The darkness becomes teeth. The ground becomes a trap. Every direction they move, something is waiting. Not just bullets, but engineered disaster. Jacob fires until his shoulder feels like it's splitting. He doesn't recognize faces. He recognizes patterns. Men trying to flee west, men trying to form defensive circles east, men trying to mount dysfunctioning horses. Every movement they make is exactly what Harrow predicted, which terrifies Jacob more than the killing, because none of this looks improvised. It looks pre-written. Boone reloads without urgency. Hour 1, he mutters. Jacob turns. It's only been an hour? Boone nods. Jacob looks back out at the inferno, the screaming, the running, the collapsing shadows. It already feels like a lifetime. Then Boone adds quietly, and the worst part hasn't started yet. Jacob freezes. Then what have we been doing? Boone keeps watching the chaos, softening the earth. As far as the outlaws know, they're in an ambush, but what they don't understand yet is that this isn't a battle. It's a containment, a slow crushing of a living wave. Inside, invisible walls, no escape corridors, no openings, no speed advantage, just exhaustion, confusion, and 7 hours slowly chewing them down. Harrow watches from the ridge, unmoving. He doesn't celebrate. He doesn't smile. He simply marks time, 1 minute at a time, adjusting nothing. Because once this machine starts, even he can't stop it. And as the second hour begins, something changes in the camp. The chaos starts to organize. Voices shift, commands grow sharper. The outlaws begin grouping, forming lines, bringing out heavier weapons from hidden crates. A Gatling wheel rolls from beneath a canvas tarp. Someone loads it. Someone turns the crank. And for the first time, the scouts hear a different kind of sound. Not fear, not confusion, but resistance. Boone tilts his head. There it is, he mutters. Jacob feels a coldness crawl up his back. What? Their spine? The wind carries a new noise now. A deep, mechanical click, 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 faster, heavier. Then a burst of metal, like a thunderstorm trapped inside a machine. The Gatling gun opens up into the prairie darkness, spraying brute force toward ghostly rifle flashes. Dirt explodes, grass disintegrates. A scout on the far ridge disappears mid-step, not falling, just vanishing. Harrow raises his hand slowly, for the first time since the flare, and whispers, "Stage 4, and the prairie goes silent for one terrifying second before screaming again. The Gatling gun doesn't roar, it devours. It turns the darkness into shredded cloth, tearing through air in mechanical hunger. Each rotation of the crank sends a ribbon of death outward, stitching lines of impact across the prairie. Dirt erupts, grass vanishes, shadows snap out of existence. And for the first time that night, the scouts stop firing, not retreating, just pausing. They vanish back into the land, pressed flat against slope and soil, as lead screams above their heads. Jacob feels the bullets passing, not hearing them, feeling them, like hornets slicing inches from his skull. Boone's face stays still, no panic, just calculation. "Don't look at it," Boone whispers. "Listen to it." Jacob swallows. Through the chaos, the gun's rhythm becomes clear, a tempo, a pattern, whir, 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 a quarter-second delay after every 40 rounds. "Counting," Boone murmurs. Jacob's heart pounds. "Why?" Boone shifts the rifle on his shoulder. "Because Harrow doesn't want to destroy it." Jacob looks at him, confused. He fires again. He wants to steal its teeth. Stage 4 was never about firepower. It was about suffocation. As the Gatling drenches the ridges, the outlaws start feeling something colder than fear. Encirclement, not bullets from one direction, bullets from everywhere. No angles, no blind spots, just invisible hands tightening. On the far eastern side, 70 hidden scouts rise from trenches dug into the earth hours earlier, and open synchronized fire in bursts of 8 rounds per man. Not random, calculated. Every shot timed to fall between the Gatling's reload rhythms. The outlaws try to pivot, expose their gun line, but every time they adjust, another sector ignites. Like fighting a thunderstorm, they begin losing men not because they're weaker, but because they're tired. They haven't slept. They're choking on powder that scrapes lungs raw. Their horses are insane. Their escape routes are slaughter corridors. And now their fire support is being systematically baited. Harrow watches the Gatling through his glass. "At 90 rounds, he murmurs to the wind. "Shift left." The signal moves silently down the line. Jacob never hears it. He just feels Boone's shoulder bump his. Now, they stand. For half a second. Fire. Drop. Reload in the dirt. Stand. Fire, drop, a rhythm human hands weren't meant to hold. The Gatling shifts, crank speeding, barrel glowing red like a coal furnace. The man operating it, a brute named Clay Mercer, known for walking through a bank robbery with 3 bullets already in his chest, thinks he's taking ground. He's not. He's being pulled into open sightlines, pulled like meat on a hook. Then the ridge behind him lights up. Not a muzzle flash, not a shot, a burning arc. 3 grenado charges launched from compressed tubes slam into the position, not exploding outward, exploding inward, a ring of steel fragments collapsing on itself. Clay never hears it. He doesn't die. He disintegrates. The Gatling goes silent, and the camp realizes something. Their spine just cracked. A howl rises from the surviving outlaws. Not fear, rage, the last fire of doomed animals. They begin rushing, not riding, running, trying to overwhelm with numbers, charging gaps that don't exist. Men with blades, men with pistols, men with bare hands. At one ridge, they break through the wire, cut their way past. 20 of them spill toward a scout pocket. Jacob sees them, sees their faces now. Blood, foam, madness, young, old, human. His finger freezes. Boone fires. 1 goes down, 2, 3. The rest crash forward. Jacob fires. Then again, then again. He doesn't remember aiming. He remembers the weight, the recoil, the way the world shrinks to sight and breath. They reach within 30 yards. 20 reduced to 8. 8 reduced to 4. 4 reduced to 2. 1 stumbles. The last outlaw keeps coming. Face twisted, a knife in his hand, eyes locked on Jacob. Not murderous, just exhausted, so tired the killing looks like a habit. Jacob's rifle clicks, empty. The man keeps coming. Jacob freezes. Boone swings his rifle like a hammer. Wood cracks against skull. The man drops and doesn't move again. Jacob doesn't speak, doesn't breathe. Boone just reloads. "Don't thank me," he mutters. "He'd have done the same for you in another life." Jacob swallows dry air. By hour 4, the outlaws no longer fight. They survive, dragging wounded, using dead men as cover, screaming names of leaders already gone. They realize it now. This isn't a raid. This isn't a posse. This is extinction math. Harrow signals the next phase, the slow push. The ring tightens, not by steps, by inches. Each scout line shifts inward, firing, reloading, advancing, firing, silence, advancing. The outlaws compress toward the center clearing, where fire still burns, where their stolen gold lies, where they thought they had conquered the night. Jacob feels feels the ground vibrating, not from explosions, from bodies. 2,000 men shrinking into a human storm under closing walls. Some drop weapons, some drop to knees, some try bargaining. None get answers. By hour 6, the camp isn't a camp, it's an aftermath. Smoke rolling like wounded breath across the lowlands. Flames dying into ash. Gunfire scattered like dying storms. The scouts move like shadows among charred remains, not finishing, just ending resistance, silence by silence. Boone sits after the last shot, not relieved, not proud, just exhausted in a way sleep will never fix. Jacob sits beside him, hands trembling. What happens now? He asks. Boone stares at dawn forming at the horizon. Now? He says. Now nobody ever believes this actually happened. Jacob looks out at the wasteland, at burning tents, at silent guns, at motionless men who once ruled 13 territories. They'll believe, Jacob whispers. Boone shakes his head. They won't, he says softly, because they like their monsters simple. Harrow walks through the field alone. No men with him, no celebration. He stops near the destroyed Gatling, looks down at twisted steel, then across the plain. 7 hours, he murmurs, not impressed, not grieved, just marking the passing of something, not a battle, a chapter, a corridor closed forever. When the sun finally breaks the horizon, it doesn't reveal glory, it reveals consequence. 500 scouts, 2,000 outlaws, one night carved into frontier memory, and a stretch of land that would never grow grass the same way again. By noon, the bodies were burned. By dusk, the dust run was erased. No maps would list it, no official records would claim it. Just whispers along frontier towns, stories told by men who weren't there, about a night where the prairie didn't speak, it listened, and when it was done listening, it swallowed everything.